got a copy of Aragon here? Yes? Bring it on up. Ooh, this looks like a well-loved copy. Now,
to see my copy.
Writing the margins. Now, I'm curious what you were saying, but now I will give you the book back, I promise. I have a few of them myself, so. All right, this is the very first line of the very first chapter of the very first book of the Inheritance Cycle. Here goes. Wind howled through the night, carrying a scent that would change the world. Okay, and who's got eldest? Yes. Now, one of the things I enjoyed the most, deluxe edition. One of the things I enjoyed the most with this series was creating the languages, and I created a number of them. The two main ones, of course, are Dwarvish and Elvish. Oh, there's a lot of extra material in the back of this book. Let me see if I can find what I'm actually looking for. In any case, I want to read for you a blessing in ancient language, which I based the language partly on Old Norse, which gives it a nice sound and feel. Now, I have to apologize because I really don't have a good Elvish accent. For one, I'm not an elf, and for two, in Elvish you are supposed to roll your R's on the tip of your tongue like you would in Spanish or Italian. However, I can only roll my R's, and I apologize because this sounds horribly obscene, but I can only roll my R's by wiggling my uvula. So I am going to wiggle my uvula at you guys, and I hope you like it too. Atra sterni on a thelduin, arner lifa unin harta onner, undu everinia on a varda. But my favorite language is definitely the Dwarvish. One, because I created it from scratch, and two, because it's really a nice meaty language. You can just sink your teeth into it. And unlike the ancient language, I actually have an excellent Dwarvish accent. Mainly because in Dwarvish you are supposed to roll your R's by wiggling your uvula. So let the wiggling commence. What is it? It's the little thing that hangs in the back of your throat and looks really icky. Okay, here we go. Farm Rethkarach. Farm Jürgen Karmeter. Nos eta Groth Bastarnog. Dur incesti Ratkithen. Bjok is Warv Aj Barzulagur. Dur Grimst Aj Schweldenrak Anwen. Mog Tor Rak. Jürgen Vran. As you might imagine, dwarves are usually hoarse, and no one much likes listening to their love poems. Okay, Brishinger. Now, as you might have noticed, Brishinger is a rather large book, and it has a lot of sentences in it, as large books tend to do. And I'm very fond of many of these sentences. One of my favorites involves a bumbling bumblebee, which I probably should have cut, but I was too fond of it. Whoops. So in any case, among all these sentences, I have one in particular that is my absolute favorite out of this whole giant book. And I want to read you my very favorite sentence out of this book. Okay? Ready? Ready? Die, puny human! Because really, what's the point of writing fantasy if you can't write lines like die, puny human every now and then? Alright, and here we go. Last book. Now, for those of you who have not read the later books or have not gotten into book 4, let me assure you there are no spoilers in what I am about to read. Oh, come on, you can read the book on your own. So this is the very end of the first chapter of the last book of the Inheritance Cycle. And I hope you enjoy it. Here goes. The sound was stabbing, slicing, shivering, like metal scraping against stone. Aragon's teeth vibrated in sympathy, and he covered his ears with his hands, grimacing as he twisted around, trying to locate the source of the noise. Saphira tossed her head, and even through the din, he heard her whine in distress. Aragon swept his gaze over the courtyard 2 separate times before he noticed a faint puff of dust rising up the wall of the keep from a foot-wide crack beneath the blackened, partially destroyed window where Blodgarm had killed the magician. As the squeal increased in intensity, Aragon risked lifting one of his hands off his ears to point at the crack. "Look!" he shouted to Arya, who nodded in acknowledgement. He replaced his hand over his ear. Without warning or preamble, the sound stopped. Aragon waited for a moment, then slowly lowered his hands, for once wishing that his hearing was not quite so sensitive. Just as he did, the crack jerked open wider, spreading until it was several feet across, and raced down the wall of the keep. Like a bolt of lightning, the crack struck and shattered the keystone above the doors to the building, showering the floor below with pebbles. The whole castle groaned, and from the damaged window to the broken keystone, the front of the keep began to lean outward. "Run!" Aragon shouted at the Varden, though the men were already scattering to either side of the courtyard, desperate to get out from under the precarious wall. Aragon took a single step forward, every muscle in his body tense, as he searched for a glimpse of Roran somewhere in the throng of warriors. At last, Aragon spotted him, trapped behind the last group of men by the doorway, bellowing madly at them, his words lost in the commotion. Then the walls shifted and dropped several inches, leaning even further away from the rest of the building, pelting Roran with rocks, knocking him off balance, and forcing him to stumble backward under the overhang of the doorway. As Roran straightened from a crouch, his eyes met Aragon's, and in his gaze, Aragon saw a flash of fear and helplessness, quickly followed by resignation, as if Roran knew that no matter how fast he ran, he could not possibly reach safety in time. A wry smile touched Roran's lips, and the wall fell. Does he live? Does he die? Read chapter 2. Before we get to the signing here, I'd like to answer just a few of your questions, and then